It's Snaps Gone Wild. Snaps Gone Wild. So this took place in Florida. What's going through the mind of the turkey? We have no idea. Because that crane could do some damage. I mean, turkeys can be kind of tough, but that crane could definitely do some damage. He's just chasing that crane all over the place. Snaps Gone Wild, ladies and gentlemen. Snaps Gone Wild. Hunt, fish, listen, repeat. Broadcasting from the Tasman Lake Lodge Studios. This is Sporting Journal Radio. Presented by OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. Now here's your host, Brett Amundson. That's right. Welcome to the show. I'm Brett Amundson. Thank you for tuning in on the network, by demand, or by wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We got a big show this week. Lots to get to. We're going to talk chronic wasting disease. Something big happened recently here in Beltrami County with chronic wasting disease, and it's a new situation that the DNR hasn't had to face before. It's a pretty unique one. It's going to be an expensive one. Nobody's quite sure who's going to be paying for it and what to do next. We'll explain all of that coming up later in the show. Barb Keller is going to be with us. She's the Big Game Program Supervisor with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. We're also going to talk to Ben Brettingen from OnX. He's back from Montana. How did he do on his turkey hunt out there, and how did OnX help him be successful in that turkey hunt? We'll find out. Garett Svir from Slab Seeker Fishing is going to check in with us and find out where he's finding crappies and what the ideal crappie fishing water temperature is. We got so much to get to. Joe Henry's going to join us and talk about the latest with the border situation with the Northwest Angle. There's always something new each week, and we'll tell you what it was this week.
Today's show is brought to us by Lake of the Woods Tourism. Plan a trip to Lake of the Woods at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Ottertail Lakes Country. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com. Haybell Heights Campground and Resort on Devil's Lake. Plan a trip to Devil's Lake at haybellheights.com. OnX, know where you stand with OnX. And Prairie Sportsman, watch episodes anytime at prairiesportsman.org.
Nice job, Dan. Thank you very much. I gave him a new assignment this week, and that was thanking our sponsors. He did a fine job of thanking our very fine sponsors. Thank you, sponsors, by the way, for being part of the show. And if you enjoy what we're doing here, please go to those sponsors, utilize their services, go to their websites, whatever, because they're good folks, ladies and gentlemen. They are good people. And Dan, you know what this handy little dandy thing is right here?
Looks like a cute little purse that you carry around, maybe.
Well,
I can't. Yeah,
a
you keep
purse?
moving it around. Well,
a purse.
You make me wonder.
It's this obviously got this at the governor's pheasant opener back in 2017. I've got so many lanyards. Dan, you're in the house right now. You've seen my lanyard stash. But this one I really enjoyed because it came with a front pocket that I can put my, obviously I put a bunch of business cards in there. And then it's got a back pocket with a little Velcro thing so you can stash stuff in there if you'd like. But it's also got this zippered pocket. So when I travel, I bring this thing with me, and so I can put I put my passport in there, and then when I'm walking through the airport, I just wrap this around my neck, and I don't have to worry about, I can find it wherever I need to go. I got my travel itinerary, my boarding passes, all that stuff can go in there. But I also have, I got my COVID vaccination shots this week, so I've got my vaccination card in there, should I need to show that to anybody. And then I got my negative COVID test, which I'll have in here because I do have to show that to get into Canada because that's where I'm headed. And everyone's like, wait a minute. They opened up the border. They're letting you go into Canada. They're letting me go because I am contracted to do some work up there with my friends at the lodges that I've been working with the last few years. Tasman Lake Lodge, of course, and then a new lodge, which is Camp Grayling, that I'm going to be working with. I'm so excited to go check this place out, Dan, because at Tasman, we got giant lake trout. We caught that 72-pounder 2 years ago. We've got a couple of 50-inch pike the last couple of years. But Camp Grayling has 50-inch pike, 40-pound lake trout, big lake trout. The provincial record Arctic grayling has come out of that lake. And there's 30-inch walleyes in there. So all four, you can get all four of them there. But here, if you've never seen Tasman TV before, here's a little sample.
Biggest fish on my boat this year was a 72 pounder, 71.96 to be exact.
Last 20 minutes of actually fishing, maybe. And that's where it all happened.
Welcome to Tasman TV. I'm Brett Amundsen, here at Tasman Lake Lodge on the sandy beach on the shore of Tasman Lake. Now, this lodge was built back in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and it was a booming business. Popular Mechanics even sent their outdoor writer up here to do a story and find out just how good the lake trout fishing was. In that article, he talked about how big the lakers were, how many there were, what kind of lures they were using, the gear, the boats, and the other day I was trolling around not too far from the lodge here using an underwater camera and came across something completely unexpected. Now that boat looks like it might be one of the original boats used here at Tasman Lake Lodge. And I'm not completely sure where I ran across that boat with the camera, but today we're gonna go out there and try to find it and see just how old that boat was. And probably do some fishing too, since right before that, I had 9 different trout on camera following my hook. Let's go see if we can learn a little bit more history about Tasman Lake and Tasman Lake Lodge. I didn't find the boat that day, but I did hook in to one of Tasman Lake's famous giants. There's fish. So right now, all I've been pretty much doing is catching up to the fish, and we'll get vertical with them, or her, I guess, and then that's when fun really begins. There he goes. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Here he's right here. Oh, it's a big fish. Oh, big fish.
Oh, yeah, baby. Oh, come on.
Nice.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah.
Woo. Right.
Nice.
Cool. 45 or 26, boys.
Nice fish. The Tasman Lake region has a rich history in mining. In the late 1930s, one company decided to build a hydroelectric dam just south of the lake. To feed more water into that dam, a 1-kilometer tunnel was blasted through rock in the southeast corner of Tasman Lake. That rerouted the current from north to south. No small feat when you're talking about horses and steam shovels. And in the years I've been coming to Tasman Lake, I've never been over to the other side of the tunnel. So Thomas Montgomery and I decided to head up the hill and see what's on the other side. I can't believe we didn't bring a fishing rod with us. A trip to the tunnel site doesn't just give you a glimpse into the past, but it offers some pretty good fishing opportunities as well.
Change your flow of Tasman from north, it used to flow down to the south, goes down Lake Athabasca and powers our hydro dams down there. Yeah, certainly. That's a nice fish, buddy. Beautiful. So what was the technique you used to catch that fish?
I ran the chartreuse fillet.
Are you up? Good stuff.
Yeah, about 23 feet of water.
Nice,
Like
gun.
plant.
Right through that narrows. And up coming nice trout. Beauty. There we go. Perfect. Let's get another one.
All right, that's a special place up there, Tazen Lake Lodge. Find out more at tazenlake.com. And, of course, pay attention to this show because we'll be doing the show from Saskatchewan as well and showing pictures and videos from this year's journey up there. All right, before we get to our first guest, we just want to say that our thoughts are with the family of Sarah Grell, who is a conservation officer up around Grand Rapids. She died in a 2-vehicle crash Monday, May 24th. She had a husband and 3 kids. Devil's Lake is legendary, and this summer has been legendary for walleyes. Don't miss out. Call Haybale Heights Campground and Resort today to book one of their modern cabins on East Bay. The cabins are furnished with a full bathroom, kitchen, and all the amenities like high-speed internet and are clean following CDC guidelines. Staying at Haybale Heights gives you full access to a private boat launch, fish cleaning station, and beach area. Learn more at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com. Plan your trip to legendary Devil's Lake today. Some big news kind of came in to my email the other day that I saw, and I was in the middle of something, so I just kind of glanced at it real quick. I'm like, oh, we got more CWD in Minnesota. Great. Yeah, here's the press release. Thanks, Dan. And then a couple of days later, I looked back and read it in more detail, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of a unique situation. This is a little more serious than I originally had thought. So we're going to bring on Barb Keller right now. She's the Big Game Program Supervisor with the Minnesota DNR. Barb, thanks for coming on the show with us.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to have you kind of break down the timeline of what happened here. We're talking about a situation in Beltrami County, a farm up there where a captive cervid farm that some CWD was found there, but then there was also some carcass dumping, and that's where things get real weird because we've had chronic wasting disease on some of the farms around Minnesota for a number of years now. The DNR has a response plan in place that they've utilized in different parts of the state. But something different happened here that I want to get into. But let's just start at the beginning. Give us a timeline of when CWD, what you can tell us about where it was found and when it was found.
Sure. So the Board of Animal Health is the agency in our state that oversees captive cervid farms. They found a positive deer inside a Winona facility in Winona County. And when that happens, they start an investigation. And so they go in and look at the records for the farms to see where they got deer from and where they sent deer to, because deer move around the state among these farms. And they found that there's a farm in Beltrami County that received a deer from this Winona facility. So then they go to the Beltrami County farm and do an investigation there. They did, during that investigation on the Beltrami farm, find a CWD positive deer there. Then again, they start looking at the records. They're talking to the owner of that farm. And during that investigation, the owner said that they disposed of carcasses from deer that died in that facility on county land. It was public land owned by the county, where other deer can it's open to other deer having contact with it. When we found that out, the DNR was working with the Board of Animal Health, and we're also working with a group of researchers at the University of Minnesota. They're with the Center for Prion research and outreach called MinPro, and Dr. Peter Larson is the head of that program there. They're working on developing better tests or more rapid tests for chronic wasting disease. And so they came out to that site and collected a lot of the carcass remains that were there. And they estimate that maybe as many as 10 to 12 deer were disposed on this site. So they collected those remains, and then they tested or began testing some of the remains there to see if they could pick up chronic wasting disease prions in those carcass remains. And indeed, they did find that one of the bones, the bone marrow in the bone, did test positive for prions, which means that a CWD positive deer, died in the farm and was disposed of on that site, which is obviously very concerning, because now we know that was in an area where wild deer had ready access to those prions on the ground. So that's very concerning to us with the DNR.
Yeah,
and
so many questions. I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize, but so many questions that are already coming up that I want to kind of hit before we get too far into this. First of all, how often are these deer moving between these farms? And maybe this is a Board of Animal Health question versus a DNR question, but I'm sure you know the answer to this too. But how are they allowed? We all know the issues with CWD and these deer farms. How are they still allowed to move around that much? Are they just restricted to stay within Minnesota? Because can they move them to farms outside of Minnesota? Or what are the restrictions currently on moving deer between these farms?
So yes, deer can move both within Minnesota and out of Minnesota to other states. Each state has their own regulations on whether they'll receive deer from certain areas, but deer do move out of Minnesota from farms to other farms. And generally they're allowed to move around the state unless the herd is placed in quarantine. And that's the Board of Animal Health will place a herd under quarantine if it's part of an investigation. So this Beltrami herd was placed under quarantine, as well as the Winona herd and other herds that were involved, but it was too late, or at least it was after that positive deer potentially moved out of Winona, the Winona farm, into this farm. So the board does have some restrictions based on, if they think that it is high risk for CWD for deer moving out of those areas, but we know that hasn't stopped, obviously, positive deer moving around the state. And so that's very concerning to us. It seems like the current system is not preventing the movement of CWD positive deer around our state.
How is there not more restrictions on that? Because when it comes to hunters, there's some restrictions on moving deer and certain parts of a deer across state lines. And then when we've discussed the elk introduction, this is a whole nother story, but we've discussed the elk reintroduction in the northeast part of the state. There was talk about having to use elk from, say, the northwest part of Minnesota because of CWD restrictions with traveling, elk, say, from Kentucky or wherever to bring them into the state. I thought there were more restrictions on these farms, so they can sell deer to Texas or wherever right now and move deer back and forth right now.
Yeah, and I'm not. There probably are some. There's regulations about paperwork they need to fill out and keeping track of that and all and those details. But yeah, they can move deer around.
Interesting. All right, and then this farm owner then talked about dumping dead deer on the county land. That raises a red flag initially, but was it a case of he didn't realize that they were infected at that time and was just dumping some dead deer somewhere? What are they supposed to do with when a deer passes away on one of these deer farms? What are they supposed to do with it?
They're supposed to get it tested for chronic wasting disease. So yeah, I can't speak to the particular what the owner knew and when. But yeah, they were supposed to get it tested. And
he didn't. He just dumped them on county land. So then the question becomes, now this is on public property, county property, which it's not supposed to happen, first of all. And then you find out that it's infected, CWD infected carcasses on this public property. So that raises the next issue of what to do with it, because when it's found on a farm, there's protocols in place to kind of isolate that farm from wild deer. It's a little bit tougher to do that on public property, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, we're just finding out now how tough it is. So we are looking into how we can isolate this area and prevent free-ranging deer from having contact with, because we know even though the carcass remains were taken from the site, prions can leach into the soil and it can continue to continue to contaminate an area even after you remove the actual carcass remains. So we are looking into how we can isolate it. We're looking into fencing off the area, which initially we thought wouldn't be too complicated, but we've now found out just how complicated it can be. This is a timbered site, and before a fence can be put up, the line, that where the fence is going to be needs to be cleared of timber. There's also wetlands in the area. It's very hard to fence over a swamp. And so, we're dealing with probably having multiple people needing to be involved, different contractors to erect this fence. We also need to consider how that fence, if we do end up moving forward with the fence plan, how it can be constructed while maintaining biosecurity in the area. Because we don't want soil to be leaving that area on, people's boots. We don't want it to be on equipment. So once we really started looking into this, and really the burden has fallen on our local and regional wildlife staff, it has turned out to be extremely complicated.
How do we know for sure that all the parts of those carcasses have been found and cleared from that site? Our staff has extensively surveyed the area. So I think we know the extent of where the carcasses were placed, but will we ever be 100% confident? I can't say that. And it's 8 to 10 acres is this area, because the deer were dumped and then they were spread out by scavenging animals, wolves, coyotes, or whatever the case may have been, correct?
Yeah, I think we're estimating that we'll need to fence an area of about 6 acres at this point.
Okay. And what CWD affects deer and elk hasn't been known to affect other species, but what effect, is there any known effect on, say, an animal that eats a CWD infected deer? Has there been known to have any side effects for that animal?
No known side effects for any predators, for example, wolves or coyotes or big cats. No known effects of them no known instances of them becoming infected with the disease. However, we do know that the prions which cause this disease can move through the digestive systems of predators and still remain infective, once they leave the digestive system in feces. So that is also concerning.
That's amazing. Obviously, a lot of information about chronic wasting disease on the DNR website there. So we're talking about involving a number of different contractors, trying to build a fence, having to clear the area. That brings up a couple of more questions, like who pays for it? I can't imagine something like that is going to be cheap. And who pays for that cost? And then is there some sort of monitoring system that'll be in place to make sure the fence stays intact? Nothing's, digging underneath it, or there's no holes getting knocked into it. What's the plan? What would be the plan there if this goes forward?
So as far as funding is concerned, we still haven't ironed all of those details out yet. We're working with the Board of Animal Health and the county to determine how this will be funded. We don't have that determined yet. As far as making sure that it is secure, that's something that is very much in our minds when we're figuring out how to construct this, is that it needs to be a secure fence. And, with that in mind, we're also looking at, clearing timber. Again, this is a timbered area that we're going to need to clear it more than just for the fence line, because we don't want a storm to come through and then have issues with trees, falling along the fence and compromising it in that way. So that it's going to involve, additional work to make sure that it is a secure site. And then it is going to need to be monitored over the years. And, there's additional cost and who does the monitoring. Those are questions we're still dealing with right now.
And how many years do you think this would have to be in place?
We're looking at likely 20 years. We know that prions can persist in the soil for at least, I believe, a dozen years based on some research with scrapie, which is another prion disease. Nobody knows for sure how long CWD prions can persist in the environment, but it's something we certainly want to be conservative about and maintain it as long as we think it could possibly continue to be infectious.
What's in place for some sort of fine or penalty for an owner of a facility like this? If something like this were to happen, are they going to be responsible for some of these costs?
That's something that the Board of Animal Health is looking at because their rules and regulations were violated. So that's something that they'll be pursuing. But I don't know for sure exactly what those outcomes will be.
At this point, his whole herd has been depopulated, correct? And he's out of business, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So he's done. All right. Gosh, you started talking about big cats, and it's made me think of the mountain lion. There was a mountain lion spotted by Alvarado recently, wasn't there?
I'm not sure. I know that they are spotted. Not infrequently, wandering across the state. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, you guys planted them here, I heard, to control the deer population or whatever it was.
We hear those theories every once in a while, yeah.
Sure. All right, back to chronic wasting disease. So this can be a situation in Beltrami County for a long time. Oh, I wanted to ask you, this is the first time, we've had instances of CWD, obviously, around the state, primarily down in that southeast part of the state. Has there been a situation of carcasses being dumped in places? And have you ever had to fence off an area like this before?
I don't believe so. I think this is the first time we're encountering this situation of, known positive carcass being placed. There, whenever we have a free-ranging CWD positive deer, our wildlife health program staff will make every effort possible to recover that carcass. There are times when that carcass has been placed on the landscape, and they will do everything they can to recover all the pieces of that carcass, and then they get disposed of in a incinerator at the University of Minnesota.
What is next? When will we find out? Because obviously time is of the essence in an area like that where there's wildlife probably moving through it all the time. And I'm assuming that area is just kind of sitting there right now, wide open. What's the timeline moving forward?
Right. So we're continuing to iron out the plans for isolating this area via fence. We're meeting with Beltrami County, I believe, early June to gain approval to move forward with our plans. And then, we'll do everything we can to secure contractors as quickly as possible to get this in place. Also, looking forward into the fall 2021 hunting season, we will be sampling harvested deer in that area. And hopefully we'll get enough samples to be confident in detecting the disease. So that'll be a big operation this coming fall. We're also are asking people that see sick or dead deer in the area to let us know, because in the meantime, we'd like to get some samples from that area. So we're asking people to report any sick deer they see. So that's also really important moving forward. So those are kind of the big next steps.
Is this, was it 12 deer that were found positive in that herd?
13, including the first one that was
13.
detected.
Is that a higher number than it's been in the past, or have we had other cases like that?
I believe we've had other farms that have had similar or higher positive detections when they've been depopulated. But it certainly raises our concern for this area, because just one positive deer shedding prions versus 12, that's just 12 times more likely that, a wild deer that has fence contact could contract the disease. So it is very concerning.
When you guys discover CWD somewhere, there's a 3-year plan with hunter harvest testing, and then all monitoring the area. It's 3 years is what I'm getting at. So you're going to have this fenced situation probably. And then would it be a 3-year plan then? Would everything else be similar to what it's been like in the past?
Yes, we have. Yeah, our surveillance occurs for 3 years. As long as after that 3 years, we're confident in the number of samples that we collected, then that response would conclude.
All right. Well, what else? Is there anything else hunters can do?
Yes, yeah. So this fall, hunters in this area that are hunting, as well as our other areas where we have CWD surveillance occurring, get your deer sampled, get it tested, abide by the carcass movement restrictions that we have in place. Even in, for example, in Beltrami, we don't have a carcass movement restriction in place at this point. But they might just consider, best practices of not moving carcasses around and not, having them travel to a new location and being placed on the landscape, just as a best management practice. Again, if you see sick deer, let us know. We'd like to get them sampled. And, another thing they can do is to become informed. Visit our website and learn about chronic wasting disease. We've got a lot of information out there. And one of our biggest struggles with this disease is misinformation. And so if hunters can become more informed so that they can help us combat that misinformation, that's a huge help to us. So please check out the information we have available. There's also, other great resources like the CWD Alliance. The National Deer Association has some great information as well. So please become informed.
It's Jessica right there. And we don't need to go down that road of the chronic wasting, the differing opinions on chronic wasting disease. We are where we are, and this is what's happening. We all need to kind of work together. It boggles my mind when people tell me that the DNR's plan all along is just to get rid of all the deer and deer hunting. I just don't it's like the biggest hunting opportunity in the state of Minnesota. I don't agree with that theory. We could go on about the future of captive cervid farms in Minnesota. I mean, would this problem be solved if we closed them all? In your opinion, you think, or in the state's opinion, or what? What's the outlook?
It would stop the farmed deer risk for CWD. So we already have it in our free ranging population in the southeast. So shutting down deer farms wouldn't stop the spread of the disease in that part of our state. But the disease moves around the landscape with the movement of deer, both wild and farmed. We know that farmed deer can move a lot quicker or longer in the back of a truck than or on a trailer than our free ranging deer do. So it is another risk, and that would remove that. Risk. This
Beltrami County one, this is the furthest north we've had CWD, correct? Minnesota?
Correct. In a farmed location. Prior to this, it would be the Crow Wing County that had a positive farm, and then we did detect one free ranging deer in close proximity to that captive farm. I think 2 years after we found it in the farm.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, it's a strange situation, unfortunate one, of course, up there. I know hunters, I'm sure, are not going to be happy about the situation that hunt up there. But Barb, I appreciate the time. Good luck with everything, and thanks for explaining it on the show for us today.
Thank you.
Show off your pride for the outdoors with new gear from the Sporting Journal Radio store. Go to sportingjournalradio.com, click on store, and browse our selection of hoodies, hats, mugs, and more at sportingjournalradio.com. Garett, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going good. It's crappie season, so we've been just immersed in crappie fishing.
Yeah, I missed you when I was up there for the Governor's Fishing Opener. We talked and tried to connect, just didn't happen. And we got on the crappies, and then now I've seen you posting, and you sent me a few pictures that Dan's going to put on the screen here in a second of some crappies that you've been catching lately. And we got on some crappies. We did not get on the crappies that you got on, apparently, because you got on some good ones.
Well, there's a lot of water. I've probably fished 11 lakes here just recently in the last couple. And some you can get, basically 90% of them are going to have crappies, but some of them have small crappies, some of them have medium-sized crappies, and some of them have some real giants mixed in. We've had a couple. I think I've had 3 fish And people throw this term around a lot, but we've had 3 honest, measured on a weight on a digital scale, 2-pound crappies here in the last week. So there is some giant ones around too if you kind of keep moving and keep hunting. But we've been, this is a good time of year to go scout too if you're not familiar with the area and you want to check out new lakes, because it's kind of predictable where the fish are going to be. That water temp gets around 65 degrees and they're going to be in those hard stem bulrushes. So you can go to these lakes without having an intimate knowledge of the lake, go find those patches of hard stem bulrushes and figure out where the crappies are, or at least get close. Now the water temps are kind of varying depending on what lake you're on. I'm fishing a lake recently here. The water temp's about 67 and those fish are still on beds in the hard stem bulrushes, but then some of the smaller lakes are warmed up way past that. And those fish are not on the beds anymore. But, the bigger lakes are really, really seeing more spawning fish if you want to look for them in super shallow water.
What's kind of that magical spawning water temperature that you like to see, Garett?
65. 65 is really the magic number when you're going to see the most activity on spawning beds. Even up to 67, 68 is still good. Once it gets into the 70s, then you're going to start to see less fish spawning. Immediately after the spawn, a lot of times they don't go far away. It's not like they migrate completely across the lake, but they're going to push out to harder bottom areas. So if you can kind of highlight some stuff, points that are harder bottom near those spawning areas, that's kind of where you're going to find them immediately post spawn. And then the pre-spawn fish, usually you've got fish in several phases of things happening. The pre-spawn fish are usually going to be on deep cabbage, kind of adjacent to those spawning beds too. So, we kind of employ a few tactics. We'll get right up and fish slip bobbers right in the hard stem bulrushes for fish that are actively spawning. I like to use a slip bobber versus a pegged because you can pitch those out. When it hits the water, it'll fall straight down in the pockets of the bulrushes and right to your bobber stop, and then you can fish in there. Then when you go to reel up, you can reel fast. That'll pull that rig up to your weight, so you're only this far, however far under the surface, and reel it in really fast so you're not getting tangled up. With a pegged float, if you throw it out there, you're a predetermined distance the whole way, and you're just going to get caught up in that stuff constantly. So we're doing that, and then we're throwing small Northland jig heads with plastics. I really like those Bobby Garland baby shads. A couple of the hot colors for us have been electric chicken, which is a pink and kind of a combination of pink color. And then there's kind of a creamy white they call monkey milk has been really good. And those baby shads on a jig head, that's a really cool debate too.
Who comes up with these names? First of all,
I know. I wish I had that job to name.
Yeah, when we filmed with Randon up there in Ottertail County, Randon Olson last fall for muskies, we were talking about the names muskie baits, and one was named McLovin, and I was like, where do people come up with these names? And we were convinced that it was like a 2 a.m. Friday night around a campfire with a cooler full of beer, guys brainstorming names. You're like, what did you call it? Monkey's milk or something? What was it? What was that one? Yeah, what was it? What? Yeah, I don't know.
The two best colors in those baby sheds for me have been the last week have been that monkey milk, that light white, and then that electric chicken. Pink is always good. Crappies pink.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of, if we're not fishing the rushes, we're looking at that cabbage immediately outside, adjacent to those areas where that they spawn or they should be spawning. And then once you think it's over, once you start to see water temps in the 70s, in those smaller lakes, then try to locate that first hard bottom area you can find that's, going to be in close proximity, kind of adjacent to those spawning areas. But yeah, we kind of have fish doing all kinds of different things. The bass are really on beds super heavy up here in Lakes Country right now. If you're going to be patrolling the shallows looking for crappies, you're going to find bass laying everywhere. So if you wanted to do some catch and release bass fishing, I had a good customer that came up on his own and was going to do some bass fishing the other day. And he went to a lake that I had guided him on last year. I think they caught 78 bass sight fishing in Simcoe.
Jeez. I think it's funny how you said that, though. It's a lake that I guided him on last year, and then he just went there on his own this year. Is that?
Yeah, and the reason is I didn't have time to get them out.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of just so immersed in panfish right now and crappies that I'm just living crappies right
Sure.
now. So he's more dialed into those bass than I am. I'm seeing some as I'm cruising around in between crappie spots, but I haven't even been bass fishing yet this year. Honestly, I hate to admit it. I like to go fish some bass.
It's okay. Bass fishing is okay. I'd rather catch crappies. Oh yeah, we got to talk about Hannah real quick too. We got to wrap this up, but you had you had Hannah Stonehouse Hudson in the boat with you the other day.
I sure did. My favorite photographer I got to fish with for a few hours, and her boyfriend Sam, great guy, actually has a Purple Heart. Real humbling to have him on the boat the other day, and they had fun. We caught some crappies. I don't think we caught a wall hanger crappie, but we caught a whole bunch of really nice ones, all kinds of 12 and up to 13-inch crappies. Pretty fast action. We hit several different lakes in a 4-hour morning.
Jeez, wow, that's dedication.
Kind of a good interview.
I need to be more proactive like that when fishing. I just they'll bite, they'll turn on at some point. We're just not doing it right. Or you got to change colors or try something else. And sometimes you just got to try a different lake. And Garett, if go ahead.
In Lakes Country, that's really been the kind of the deal that we've been doing is I'll go through my waypoints where we were catching them. And if we don't hit them in 10 minutes, we're on to the next waypoint. If we don't hit them in 7 waypoints, we're going to my next lake and then start burning the waypoints at that lake. And I was kind of thinking that when you were up for opener too, I know you spent a lot of time kind of where you were.
Yeah.
I wish I could have got you to jump around a little bit.
I should have, but I had a great time. It was good. And Friday obviously was really good. So I didn't think I needed to move too much on Saturday, but I was on a completely different part of the lake. And I don't know, I was trying to fish similar conditions that we found them in the day before. And obviously the weather had changed a bit, but obviously the crappies were not in that part of the lake like they were further down south, but that's all right. Sometimes you got to move around, and if I was looking for a guide, that's a nice trait in a guide to find, because they're going to do what they have to do to find you fish. And if somebody wants to jump in a boat with you, Garett, what should they do?
You can give me a call on my cell phone. It's 320-428-5174. Or you can send me a text. I have a website, slabseekerfishing.com, or the Facebook page, Slab Seeker Fishing at Facebook.
And, of course, you can go to ottertaillakescountry.com. Garett, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on, guys. Good day.
Did you know there are more than 1,000 lakes in Ottertail County?
Yep, and I'm going to fish as many as I can. I'm an outdoorsy otter. Nothing beats a full day of fishing for me. The lakes of Ottertail County give me plenty of options to lower my boat and snag the perfect catch. Not an outdoorsy otter? No problem. Ottertail County has something for everyone. You just need to find your inner otter.
To find your inner otter, go to ottertaillakescountry.com. The OnX Hunt Map, the most intelligent and accurate GPS mapping tool for hunters. OnX. Now your weekly 2-minute tip from OnX. Know where you stand. I really need to change that, because we're definitely going to go longer than 2 minutes here with Ben Brettingen, because we're going to talk about some of the adventures he's been on lately and some of the adventures he's going to be going on here very soon. Ben, how's it going?
It's going great. It's spring, everything's in full swing, and coming off of turkey season and getting ready to fish for the summer. So
I think by all accounts, it seems like it's been a pretty decent turkey year for a lot of the guys that I know. It seems like a lot of them shot birds this year, somewhere anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard kind of mixed reports. For the most part, yeah, guys are doing well. I've heard it's a lot of, coincidentally, it was a weird year. The birds just weren't, acting normal, but it's all about just finding that one bird, that right bird that wants to play, and making it happen. So
that's right. I'm just going to try to you sent me some pictures here, so I'm just going to try to pull them up if I can. Let's see. First of all, while I do this, why don't you tell me about where you went and where you shot this bird that we want to talk about?
Yeah, so I went out to Montana with Onyx and a couple of the guys from the hunting public, as well as Sam Soholt, and just had a good old Eastern Montana turkey camp. And I had never really hunted that area for turkeys, neither had any of the other guys. So great time just to, it was a big piece of public land and just figuring out where the birds were and getting on them. The densities out there weren't super high, so a lot of time spent scouting, driving around, as well as walking, covering ground, just trying to find those birds that want to play, and we made it happen. So this is
there's one.
Yeah, so this is just a beautiful Merriam's, just that bright pearly white. So I had the little pup out there with me too, so he got to go run around and do some exploring and camp while we were out there. But
that's awesome.
Just a fun group of guys and great way to kind of wrap up the 2020 turkey season. 2021, I guess.
I suppose it is. Well, yeah, we'd pretty much just skip 2020 for the most part. So
exactly.
Yeah, Montana, I'm sure that was terrible landscape in Montana there to hunt.
It's ugly. Don't ever go there to turkey hunt.
It's funny. I didn't realize who you went with, but as soon as you sent me this picture and I looked at it, I'm like, was Sam Soholt on this trip with him? Because when you see stuff like this looks like something. I don't know whose this was, but it looks like something that Sam would have.
Yep, Sam brought out the public land van and the wall tent and his trailer, and him and his brother Josh were out there, and they know how to do camp right. That is for certain.
Yeah, that looks like a pretty good time. So tell me about shooting that bird. Was it one that you had seen, or did you just call it in, or what happened?
Yeah, so what happened is we were going, we had been kind of hunting the same area and just checking out kind of the core area where we had seen birds a couple days before, and it was getting to the point where it was kind of a grind. And we were driving off to this next spot, and way up in this pocket basin, we see a strutter with a few hens. And thankfully there was, we got on Onyx, and there's the whole bottom of this creek area is all private. And thankfully there was kind of a piece of public land that jutted through, and we were able to get around from the road. And it was probably, a mile and a half back in there, and got to the spot, set up, and nothing. And called a little bit more, boom, he gobbled, waited about 10 more minutes, and he was back another 300-400 yards. So it's just like, dang it. And so we keep moving up closer on this bird, and right when we think we're in his wheelhouse, the bottom fell out and it just started pouring. We were just sitting there in the rain, like, oh, this is terrible. Like, we thought we were in the ball game and it just starts pouring. And thankfully it was just a quick shower. It was done. Maybe rained for 20 minutes. And so we get back over there, and this kind of basin just comes up, and there's like, all right, we get to this area. There's nowhere for him to go, really. So kind of set up, and I start calling a little bit, just some really light clucks, purrs, some light, almost like tree yelps, just really soft. And all of a sudden, here comes that head up over their eyes looking, and he was being super wary. This area does get a little bit of pressure, but he stuck his head up, and I could see he had another hen with him, and he just kind of sat there half strut, just looking, trying to periscope for some hens. And I was a little nervous he was going to get away, so I wasn't going to ask him to put on a show and shot him. So
yeah, don't hesitate.
No, exactly. And it wasn't a show, but sometimes those tough turkey hunts where you're just you versus the gobbler, they're not burning the woods down, like, those are some really fun hunts to kind of test your skills against them. So
were you using a decoy or just kind of spot and stalk, or what were you doing?
So the first few times we set up with the decoy, and then, kind of how it works is we just left the decoys and just started going after them. And, to be honest, like in that situation, and, there was some thick areas, but in thicker areas like that, we were kind of on the side of a ravine. I don't even bother with the decoy. I'll just try to pull them in with some calling and and some leaf scratching, that kind of thing, just to pique their interest where they have to move forward to actually come and see where that noise is coming from. It's obviously different, in open areas where they can see and they're like, yeah, I hear something, but I should be able to see that hen over there. So that turned out good.
That's awesome. That time I shot this year, we didn't have a decoy either, but we pulled him off a hen in an open field over to our corner of the field. And as soon as he got in range, it was, I can shoot him now. Click, bang. Yeah. So all over quickly. Well, congratulations on, sounds like a fun trip out to Montana with a good bird. And obviously Onyx helped you get that bird. And if people don't have Onyx, everybody I talk to's got it, but Ben, there's gotta be somebody out there that doesn't. How do they get it?
Yeah, you can go to wherever you get your apps, whether it's Google Play Store or the Apple Store on iOS, and search Onyx Maps. Otherwise, you can go to onyxmaps.com and download the Onyx Hunt app.
Onyx Hunt. Ever heard of it? Next time you see that guy at your local shop who always punches his tag on a stud whitetail, ask him. He'll tell you about the most trusted source for mapping, with nationwide landowner names, private and public land boundaries, including walk-in areas, map tools to mark spots, and the ability to view your maps without cell service. And that's just scratching the surface. It's your time to be known as the big buck guy around town. Download the leader in hunt mapping on Google Play or the App Store. Onyx Hunt. Know where you stand.
All right, now it is time for us to get a fishing report and get just an overall report from up at Lake of the Woods. We've got Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism joining us right about now. Let's bring you on here, Joe. How you doing?
Hey, Brett. I'm doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I obviously I want to talk about fishing and figure out how things are going up there at Lake of the Woods, but so much of what we've talked about and so much of what I've got going on right now is dealing with the Canadian border. And last week, pretty much as we were recording for this show, I found out some changes to the border for residents of the Northwest Angle. They can come and go now to the U.S. mainland without having to go through any sort of COVID testing and restrictions. So we were kind of celebrating that finally happened, Joe. We were all excited about that, and then it didn't happen right away, right? Or what's going on up there?
Yeah. So what happened was, so Public Health Canada came out saying that, okay, the border shut for, the country did, the border shut for another month, whatever. And, in that they put some addendums or some notes. And some of the notes they put on there is that, okay, now the Northwest Angle residents are now deemed exempt, meaning they can come and go across that 40-mile stretch of barren wilderness. And to get up to the Northwest Angle, of course, through Canada there. So anyway, that was all set, right? Well, all of a sudden our residents started going across and they're getting turned around that they need negative COVID tests. So something was wrong. So, I contacted Canada Border Services Agency, and they're very good to work with typically. And, we were just told that no, there's still some criteria. If they're not going down for essential services, if they're gone too long, And, after hanging up the phone with an agent, about 15 minutes later, I got a message back that, they reread the new orders and realized they made a mistake, to their credit. And they are now, of course, letting people over, the residents over that should have been let over, from the get-go. So, sometimes there are so many orders floating around that I can understand how you get a new order, they interpret it a certain way when they read it quick based on what other orders have been. And they realized, oh, wait a second, Northwest Angle residents really are exempt. They don't have to say where they're going necessarily or what they're doing. They can come and go back to their homes up at the Northwest Angle now.
But how did it read exactly? Like, how was there a misinterpretation? Because what I saw, basically, they were talking about two places, the Northwest Angle and then Alaska, and driving through the Yukon. So people at the port of entries around the Northwest Angle should have known that there was some new rules for them. Obviously, they knew, but they misinterpreted them. What was the miscommunication there?
Well, that's exactly what it was. It was, it was some agents that, read the new orders and were misinterpreted. Mm-hmm. And after reading them closer a few times over with colleagues, they kind of realized, I think we made a mistake. And again, to their credit, again, CBSA, Brett, Canada Border Services Agency overall has been very good to work with. And you got to imagine with the Northwest Angle, they're seeing our residents all the time passing back and forth on their way to Warroad and Roseau to get essentials and go live life sometimes. They're normally very good to deal with. So it was just it was a mistake on their part for one day. And, we seem to have it worked out now.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. And it happened at what, 2 different locations up there, Joe? Is that right?
Yeah, when you go over at Warroad, that's called the Sprague port, and then when you go over in Roseau, that's called the South Junction port. And there was first one of the ports made a mistake on it and corrected it, and then the other port said they weren't going to honor that. And we got a hold of a supervisor, and they had to do a little education, and it should be all straightened out now. But that's just one of the things that happens, and that's why it sure is helpful to have a good relationship with the folks over at CBSA, because when something happens, we can just communicate. Sometimes there's just errors. Sometimes things are changing constantly for those men and women, and they have to constantly interpret the new orders and new rules. And, it's even like this thing with the Northwest Angle being non-exempt. This never should have happened. And Canada Border Services Agency was petitioning for us to be exempt all along. But, Public Health Agency of Canada, they don't know anything about the angle. They whoever was in charge didn't listen, and here we are. So we had to work our tails off just to get back to where we should have been from the get-go.
Well, it's tough for anybody to follow, I think, as things have changed here and there. Some things have remained constant, but things have changed, and just trying to keep up with it all is a tough job. But the good news is, it's working now, and the residents can come and go again. And
no, the resorts are still really struggling up there because people can't get up there. The normal way a tourist, as would get up to the Northwest Angles by driving that 40 miles through Canada, and the border's still shut.
Right.
So while everybody else goes on with their lives and runs businesses and gets over the pandemic and no masks and all this stuff, the Northwest Angle resorts sit there with just a handful of customers, literally a handful. I mean, a lot of the resorts I'm talking to are down 75 to 90% on the revenue. So, we're trying to do a couple of things. Number one, we're trying to get that road 40 miles stretched through Canada. There's hardly any people in that stretch of Canada, There's one little town, Sprague, Manitoba, that we could certainly drive around if we needed to, no problem. We've talked about having a pilot car, having a GPS program for each vehicle when they go through, doing a check-in system where if you're outside the time parameters, you get big fines. There's a number of things we could do, but so far we haven't got any, response from the Canadians in regards to doing something special. We're not trying for the whole border in our case. We're trying for one 40-mile stretch from the U.S. to the U.S. Brett, we've got a lot of publicity on this thing, and we think that publicity helps us because we think that it brings light to it and puts pressure on some of the people that are making decisions. And to give you an example, last week we were part of CTV, which is a national news network all across Canada. This week we had the New York Times up at the Northwest Angle. So watch for something coming out in the New York Times about Minnesota's Northwest Angle. So, we're trying to get the notoriety for it. We're trying to get something changed. Number one, we want that 40-mile stretch opened up so people can run their businesses again and live. And then secondly, we're trying to get some kind of, there's trillions of dollars coming down the pipeline from the federal government for COVID relief stuff. And you know what, if the Northwest Angle being cut off from civilization and from their customers, everybody else is essential workers. People are coming and going. Delivery drivers, people working on the Canadian side, infrastructure projects, they're coming and going through the Angle. Yet, you know what? Essential to our resorts are visitors coming up to the Northwest Angle to go fishing and enjoy the outdoors, but they're not essential. So we're getting a little bit frustrated at this point. This is the second summer that our Northwest Angle resorts have been cut off. So what we're trying to do is get some revenue. And we don't need it next year. We need it now. It's crucial.
Well, Joe, I've never been an advocate for like a COVID vaccine passport or any sort of program like that. But if it would allow you to get across the Canadian border, whether to go to the Angle or, anywhere, really, if vaccinations are what they say they are, I don't see why there should be any reason that if you can show that you've got a vaccination that you shouldn't be able to cross the border to go fishing and give some money to these angle lodges or some of these other Canadian resorts for that matter. Not to take the focus off the angle for a second, but I mean, to me, that seems like an obvious answer and an immediate answer in a way to start to get that economy rolling again for some of these people, that sector of the economy. Now, I know there's bigger issues at play when it comes to border crossing and health issues and things like that. But right here, when it's summer, the beginning of summer right now, and so many of these people make their year during the summer fishing months, now is the time to figure something out to allow some of these businesses to stay in business. And if that's by showing that you've had a vaccination, I think you should be able to get across the border with that. And it seems like maybe they're just starting to discuss loosening some of the border crossing restrictions. Hopefully that continues down that path. I know everybody hears rumors and nobody knows who's right and who's wrong and what's true. But have you heard anything any more on what might be going on with the border, Joe?
No, just through the media. And, quite frankly, my gut tells me by the time that happens, the summer will be over. I'll tell you, I had a chance to be interviewed by the New York Times, and the reporter asked me a question. He said, if you had the opportunity to say 2 sentences to Prime Minister Trudeau, what would you say? And I really thought about it. I thought, geez, Mr. Trudeau, first off, the United States and Canada have had and still have a very, very special relationship, no doubt about it. At the same time, in trying to work things out for the Northwest Angle, nobody is trying to jeopardize health. Right. So with health and safety first and foremost, this would be a simple fix. It would go a long ways with relations between Canada and the United States. This is a simple one. Please consider this little exclave they call the Northwest Angle in your future plans. And it's simple as that.
Well, if the border remains closed and people want to fish the angle this summer, there is a way for them to get up there and do that, right?
Fishing's been so good up there. I mean, the freaking walleye fishing has been so good. And there's 3 ways to get up. Number one, you can take your own boat across, but you gotta have the right boat, Brett, and you gotta know what you're doing on that big water. Because this big water, you're going 40 miles across big open water. Gotta have some flexibility. If it's a blow day, you're not gonna go. The waves are too big. So that's one option. Might not be the best option for most. The second option is the Lake of the Woods passenger service, and that's taking people up via charter boat this time of year. A round trip, they'll take you to whatever resort you want to go to. You get up there, either you rent a boat or jump in with a guide, and you can have the time of your life. Very simple, no worries. Go to Sportsman's Lodge on the south end of the lake over the Rainy River there by Wheeler's Point and jump on a boat, and they'll take good care of you. And then finally, Lake Country Air. Lake Country Air is a fly-in service. They have float planes that they're amphibious, so they also will land on a tarmac. But from Baudette, they're flying up. It's like a 10-minute flight over the lake and landing up on the water of the Northwest Angle. Quick, easy. They also got a larger plane now that's flying for their different locations of Minnesota to get groups up there. So I mean, if you got the money and you want to go ahead and just save a bunch of time and get up to the next best thing from Canada, I mean, really, it's like the Canadian experience, except you're technically in the United States. That'd be a good choice.
It's like that ice road. You had to pay a fee to go across that ice road in the winter. But as we discussed here, you're paying a little bit more money to get up there, but it's a way to help those businesses survive. I know it's not fair to ask somebody to pay more for something, but not only is it good fishing, it's a unique location, but you'd be helping out those resorts up at the Northwest Angle by spending a little bit of money to get up there and do it.
It's kind of for a lot of people who, if you have the funds, it's principle.
Yeah.
It's supporting hardworking Minnesotans who they don't have their hand out. They don't want anything. What they want to do is they want to go to work. And we're talking about some, every business owner is different. Some people just purchased the resort a couple of years ago and they got mortgages and taxes and expenses. And can you imagine? And then there's others that are multi-generational, that this has never happened in the generations that they've had, the resorts. So, we have a little bit of everything, but I'll tell you one thing about these people up at the Angle who own resorts. They're hardworking, good character kind of people, and they don't want any handouts. But But I will tell you this too, people have been so supportive, man, with that Northwest Angle Guest Ice Road. Heck, we had a couple people bought road passes just to support them, even though they weren't coming up fishing. So pretty good stuff, you know what I mean?
Joe, we're planning a family trip and we're a little late. I know most people have their travel plans booked by now, and sometimes people still make plans for summer trips here this time of year. But we're a little late, but we're planning our summer trip to Lake of the Woods right now. How worried should we be about finding a place to stay? Because I know last year on the south end in the Rainy River there, it was gangbusters. Not like the Northwest Angle was tough for the angle, but the south end was big business. How busy is it going to be this year? And, how soon should we be locking up our reservations?
Well, we're having a good year, and we're going to continue having a good year. And that's just the way it is. When you're dealing right now during the pandemic or post-pandemic, however you want to look at it, outdoor recreation and fishing are two super popular activities. Getting out of the metro is a super popular activity. Yeah. And, we fit all of them. So it's been very good on the south end of Lake of the Woods. Now, I will tell you this, with 50 resorts, lodges, and hotels, there's going to be somewhere for you to go. Now, will you be able to get your very first choice of resorts? Maybe, maybe not. But if you're flexible and willing to go to maybe a resort you haven't been to or a hotel you haven't been to, well, then I think that it's going to be very doable. And I will say too, for people that are looking to get a place, if you're going on a weekend that's super busy, we do have something called the Lodging Availability Finder on our website. You put in your information.
Hold on, Joe. Before you explain that, we got Dan here. And Dan, you can talk about personal experience with this, right?
Yeah, that thing is sweet. Last year, we normally go to Canada. We go to Ontario for a family trip. Obviously couldn't do that. So we were scrambling to find a place to look. And so I was looking at some other areas and destinations, whatnot, and there's a bunch of resorts in these areas, and so I'm searching for who's got availability, who's got what. I'm having to look on their website, email them individually, whatnot. It was a pain in the butt. You go on Lake of the Woods, MN.com, find, put in what you want, and bam, resorts reach out to you. And we were able to we stayed at Riverbend, and it was perfect. And how easy that was to find a place. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty slick, Dan, and I'll tell you, it's you send that one email, it gives you a choice of what part of the lake you want to stay on, south end or up the angle, and you hit that email and it sends it to all the resorts. And if they have openings, they'll ping you back. And it's also a nice way to interact. Oh, hey, by the way, we wanted somewhere on the water. We wanted, do you have charter boats available? Do you have dock slips if we're bringing our own boat? I mean, it is pretty slick. So glad you tried that. It actually works pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's sweet. I'll be using that again for sure.
Before I was tourism director, and before the websites and everything, I'll date myself. I had that little booklet with all the resort names. And if I could get out of here on a Thursday or a Friday, unexpected trip up to Lake of the Woods when it was busy, I'd be dialing for dollars on the way up. And it worked because a lot of times I'd get into some of these resorts that maybe don't have the big marketing budget, so you don't recognize their names. I could go on with a lot of lists, but I mean, Rainy River Resort, Ship's Wheel, Ken Marquis, Linder's Log Cabins, Fred's Beds has. I mean, I don't want to miss anybody. Bugsy's on Boston. But there's a number of resorts, Slim's, Lake Road Lodges. I mean, there's a lot of places that are cute little resorts that you'd love them once you got there, but you're not going to see them so much because they don't have the huge marketing budgets and they're not in the news so much.
Well, I figured having Dan explain that, will give a little bit of a different perspective, Joe, than you having to give the pitch again.
I'm glad it works, and it's a good tool that a lot of people really don't know about. But man, it saves a lot of dialing for dollars, as I'd say.
Well, we're looking forward to our trip up there. I know fishing has been good, Joe, and if people want to try that or find a place to go this summer, what should they do?
Yeah, or check out the current fishing report. We keep it really up to date. Check out our website, and that is lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
This has been the Finding Fins Fishing Podcast, part of the Sporting Journal radio family. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts, or go to findingfins.com and make sure to like our sponsors. Northern Minnesota's Walleye Factory is a year-round world-class fishing destination. The perfect getaway this summer is just a short drive to Lake of the Woods. Fish Big Traverse Bay, the Rainy River, or visit the unique Northwest Angle. To catch big fish, you have to go where the big fish are. Plan your trip to Lake of the Woods at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. That's lakeofthewoodsmn.com.